Years after the rapture, a group of survivors have considered the ability to speak a sin. Among them is Azrael, who gathers berries in the woods and adds the fruits to a bracelet she's making. Suddenly, she hears a movement nearby, but when she sees nothing amiss, she heads back to her tent, but her boyfriend Kenan has managed to start the fire to keep warm. Azrael hurries and smashes the fires out in case someone may see them. She asks Kenan if anyone followed them after ensuring that no one has discovered them. She pushes Kenan in anger for putting their lives at risk. They continue pushing forward into the woods, but Azrael keeps walking, still furious. Kenan. He whistles for her attention and an alarmed Azrael chimes in by hushing him since someone may hear him. She's overcome with fear and exhaustion of hiding, and the woman breaks down. Her boyfriend rushes to comfort her, which eventually leads them to kiss. Azrael then hands over the bracelet that Kenan had made, but their romantic moment is disrupted when they hear whistles coming from a distance. Afraid that they've been found, the two hide behind a tree. However, they hear the others nearing them, so Kenan gestures for Azrael to run while he diverts them away. Azrael tries to stop him, but the man insists. He quietly runs to the other side and whistles. When he is far to guide the others to him, Azrael takes this opportunity to run in the other direction, but she ends up being spotted by Anton. Anton chases down the woman and leads her to be captured by Luther. The men then drag Azrael, who sees that Kenan has also been captured, by Isaac and Liesl. The couple struggles to fight against their captors, but as Liesl presses a knife at Kenan's throat, the two surrender again as they're thrown into two different cars. While trapped inside the trunk of the car, Azrael attempts to flee while keeping a watch on the other car where Kenan is. Much to her chagrin, the other car turns to another road, leaving her with no clue where LLB. Eventually, her captors drag her to where their leader waits. Luther, Anton, and Severin then bind her to a chair before Josephine faces the woman. As punishment for deflecting, Josephine wounds Azrael's legs. Her blood attracts something from the woods, and the others head to higher ground to let Azrael be sacrificed to the monsters. Azrael desperately tries to struggle through her bonds while the others breathe heavy as if to pray while waiting for the sacrifice. Soon, Azrael sees humanoid creatures lurking nearby, so she pulls on her bonds stronger. One of the dark creatures screeches as it closes in, but Azrael soon starts breaking one of the armrests, which Anton notices. With the others distracted in their prayer, Anton goes to stop Azrael from escaping. However, during their struggle, the woman accidentally stabs him with the broken wood tied to her arm. As Anton bleeds, he walks into the woods where one of the humanoid creatures called the Burned Ones captures him and feeds on his blood. Azrael watches this in horror, while she struggles to free her other arm. Finally, she breaks free and runs. Only then do the others look back and see Anton's body being dragged away. Azrael eventually reaches some ruins by the river where she rests. She contemplates crossing the river to gain distance away from her enemies but realizes that Kenan is still at risk, so she heads back. With this, she gets medicinal leaves to patch up her wound, only to realize that a burned one has smelled her blood. It lurches towards her, and Azrael quietly hides within the ruins. However, the creature follows her blood scent, so Azrael. As the creature approaches her, she covers her wound in hopes of keeping the smell hidden. Fortunately, this tactic works, and the creature departs. Walking back to the woods, Azrael eventually finds fresh tire tracks. She believes this is the car that took Kenan, so she follows them. This leads her to the enemy's camp. Quietly, Azrael makes a hole in their fence for her to crawl through. She proceeds to look for Kenan, though in the process she knocks something over, attracting the watchman, Leon. Since there was no other movement, Leon dismissed the noise, which created an open passage for Azrael to cross over to the other side of the camp. This brings her to spot the bracelet she had given Kenan on ground, assuring that indeed he was at camp. So Azrael disappears from sight. Josephine checks up on her frail mother in the tent, before walking towards the church camp, where everyone else is from the village. A mass takes place, the whole celebration is presided over by the pregnant priestess, Miriam. The woman listens to the wind blowing from a hole in the chapel, believing that this is how God speaks to them. Miriam then blows a candle to alert everyone that their mass is over. The villagers begin to leave, but Josephine stays to face Miriam. Without words, Miriam understands that Josephine failed in sacrificing Azrael, so she slaps the woman. Just as they listen to the sound from outside, but Miriam checks no one's around. Azrael is actually under the church, watching as Josephine exits the place. She waits as the woman circles around the church, but Josephine soon goes out of her sight. To her shock, Josephine suddenly crawls towards her. The woman manages to pin her down and strangle her, but Azrael kicks her off and knocks her out. She crawls out of the church but finds that the camp is now full of people. Desperately, Azrael dodges the villagers, but Josephine recovers and rings a bell, alerting everyone about the intruder. With no choice, Azrael goes to the fence to run away, but Isaac sees her and runs. The woman fights to pass through the barbed fence, wounding her hands in doing so. Lucky for her, she manages to climb out and kicks off Isaac when he grabs her leg. As she runs through the woods, Leon shoots at her but misses, and she disappears into the woods. Azrael runs till nightfall, leaving her exhausted. She leans on a rock to rest for a moment, unaware that her blood is smeared on the surface when she leaves. The smell immediately attracts a burned one, and Azrael spots it licking her blood from the rock. It then catches the scent of her hand carrying blood, so Azrael gives space as he finds another creature next to him. She runs with the two monsters trailing her until she gets to another highway where a truck knocks her out. The truck driver Damien runs to check on the woman, and to her shock, he speaks to her, though in a strange tongue. Of course, all this leaving no doubt of his not belonging to Josephine's village. Azrael still does not trust the stranger. But far away she has heard the burned ones, so she has nothing to do now but get aboard his truck, urging him to speed along. Damien is at a loss. She won't say a word, but gets into his car and he drove off with her. During the ride, Damien offers her a towel for her bleeding hand. He tries to talk to her again, but Azrael shakes her head to let him know that she can't speak. Then, she shows him the scar on her neck, which reveals that her vocal cords had been removed. This makes her companion worried. He then turns the car radio on, allowing Azrael to listen to a song for the first time. The woman is confused by this at first, but she starts enjoying the music. Just then, a bullet is shot straight into Damiana Euro's head as Severin has found them. Damien's body weighs on the truck's pedal, causing them to speed wildly and run over Severin. Azrael tries grasping the wheel but spots a wrecked building up ahead. She shields herself right before the truck crashes. Azrael quickly exits the truck and spots an injured Severin preparing his rifle to shoot her. Instead, Azrael tackles him and he tries to strangle him with his weapon. The fight sends the two tumbling down the slope. Severin manages to retrieve his gun and fires at Azrael, but it jams. Instead, he slams it on her to keep her from escaping. However, Azrael grabs a rock and hits him over the head with it. This distracts Severin long enough for Azrael to get his rifle. She loads it, but the man surprises her and pulls her into a chokehold. Still, Azrael uses her legs to draw the rifle close. She aims it at Severin's temple, just at the side of her own head, and fires, killing him and rendering herself momentarily deaf. When Azrael has come to, she starts walking through the woods once more. Eventually, she sees a figure by a campfire. The woman raises the rifle to shoot him, but realizes it's wounded Kenan. Without a thought, Azrael runs to him but gets caught in a trap that swings her upside down from the branch of the tree. And finally, there she sees a sight, the same tree, and on it a nailed hand Kenan. At that moment arrives Luther, an experienced man who had previously invented the very trap to imprison this woman. He takes away the woman's rifle from Severin and hits Kenan with it. In no time, the injuries bring in the burned ones. Luther seeks around in the dark for the beasts while Azrael tries her best to free herself from the rope. Unfortunately, that is what leads her to open up the wound on her hand. As the blood runs out from her hand, she sees that Luther is not around. And then, a burned one appears, having caught Luther. It throws him onto the tree trunk and then licks its blood from the wood. Luther tries to break free, but still more monsters appear and rip at his skin. The whole time, Azrael struggles to climb up the rope and finally manages to pull she herself over a branch. Then, she waits and watches as Luther is outnumbered and fed on. Kenan wakes up in time to see the horror and finds Azrael shocked at finding out he's still alive. The man stays silent in order not to be seen while the burned ones carry Luther's dead body into the woods. Thinking it is safe, Azrael begins going to him, but a burned one finds him and starts feeding on him. Azrael tries climbing down to save him, but another monster catches her scent and starts climbing the tree. With no choice, she pulls herself higher up the tree. Watching in horror as Kenan gets dragged away. The burned one chasing her nears, and the Rope on Israel's leg catches another branch. She hastily unties her leg, but the monster manages to grab her before she moves again. He pins her down, so Azrael ties the rope around its neck before leaping off the tree, taking it down with her. This causes the creature to be hanged while she falls on the ground. Tired, Azrael gets back on her feet, barely being able to mourn Kenan's death. Instead, she picks up Severin's rifle and decides instead to seek revenge against her enemies. She goes back to the campsite and hides behind a tree and then whistles. As she believes she is one of their friends, Isaac whistles back. However, as she cannot be found, Isaac motions that the rest should go and search the woods with him. This enables her to slip inside unnoticed. She goes to the church where she finds Miriam at the altar. Knowing that she was directing the others to hunt her down, Azrael trains a gun to the priestess but tenses up momentarily when she observes her pregnant stomach. Miriam takes her cue to swat her pistol and hit her with a frying pan. Once she falls, Azrael accidentally scratches Miriam's belly. Azrael is soon dragged out of the camp and back into the woods where they've dug a grave. The others heave their breaths, praying to summon the burned ones while Isaac smears Israel's blood on her face. They then drop Azrael into the wooden coffin and seal her inside. Azrael pounds the lid from within as villagers start shoveling dirt on the casket. Then, looking down, they pull on the side of a coffin showing a tunnel system on the inside connecting to underground, and having little choice in matters, she decides to scuttle into this in hopes of a way out of there. When she does, however, she hears noise from the black. The woman continues until she sees something like light, but out of the black comes a burned one. It moves in her direction and Azrael crawls away as fast as she can do. Instead, she ends up back in the casket while the burned one blocks the only exit. Afraid, the woman becomes paralyzed as the creature climbs over her, smelling the blood on her face. In a final act of defiance, Azrael makes a silent scream at its face. Just then, the creature takes her hand and smells it. Azrael remembers that she accidentally scratched Miriam's belly when she fell, and the scent of the other woman's blood distracts the monster. To her astonishment, the burned one retreats, and she is left unscathed. However, though confused, Azrael takes advantage of the situation to run away. Josephine's party eventually returns to their camp. While Isaac and Liesl, a couple, are off to their respective tents, Josephine checks up on her ailing mother. Unbeknownst to them, Azrael has dug herself out of the hole they left her in. At church, Miriam scrubs off the scratch. When Josephine arrives to come and assist her, not many minutes after that, they hear something coming from the camp. So Josephine rushes outside and sees her tent on fire. Josephine tries to make her way towards her mother, but Isaac pulls her to safety. The others throw water over the flames in a futile effort to quell it, but the fire soon starts spreading to the nearby tents. Suddenly, Leon is shot, so Liesl takes cover. They spot that Azrael has returned. So Liesl grabs her rifle and returns fire. However, the spreading flames distract the woman. This allows Azrael to have an unobstructed view at her. Liesl falls down and Isaac attempts to dress her wounds. Meanwhile, shell-shocked Josephine suddenly regains herself and moves away to hide, but Azrael also shoots her dead. While others from the villagers rush to the woods, Isaac weeps as Liesl dies in his arms. He then puts her down and reaches for a gun to take revenge on her. This now becomes a gun battle between him and Azrael. After the shooting dies down, the man hibernates behind trees and tents and tries to locate the lady. The sound of her whistling around the camp makes him follow the sound but still fails to find hers. This finally infuriates the man, so when he sees some movement within the flames, Isaac shoots immediately, but then realizes he has just shot somebody else. As he gazes upon his victim, Azrael emerges from behind and slices off his head. Azrael now moves on across the camp with a machete, walking past Josephine's body along the way. She marches up to the church but Miriam attacks her from behind with a cleaver. Azrael fends off the attack but ends up losing her weapon, compelling her to scuttle under the pews so that the woman doesn't reach her. Miriam manages to catch up and grabs the woman. Both women wrestle over her weapon. Miriam tries to shove Israel's move towards her sword blade, but the woman kicks at her ankle and breaks free. Miriam lowers the cleaver toward her once more. Azrael dodges, however, and the blade becomes lodged in another pew. With this action, Azrael thrusts the woman toward the wall where she bites on her neck. The pain and stress causes to Miriam's water break, to everyone's astonishment. She walks her way toward the altar, and Josephine, who still lives, shoots their adversary. Azrael dodges the bullet by the pews, but is held up, and Josephine got distracted upon seeing Miriam gave birth. She lets that hit her in the ground. Azrael was able to pound Josephine, with a heavy motion. Josephine pulled off a piece of broken wood, and bang.